morning. Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. This is another TTF webinar, and we're very pleased today to be able to welcome you along and to welcome New South Wales' fabulous Minister for just about everything. Transport, infrastructure, you name it, is happening in Minister Constance's portfolio. So thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Thanks, Margaret.
Our pleasure entirely, as ever. So let's get started, because I think, it's such a huge portfolio, and your other extra interests from a bushfire point of view obviously are critical to the recovery of the state as well. And I might just start off and ask you that question. How are things going? I mean, how is the recovery process going in those regional communities? We're looking potentially at a bit of a surge in Australian-based tourism. Are those communities ready for it?
Look, to be honest, and thanks, Margie, for the question, and thank you to you and your members for your support. For regional communities in particular, I think it's been a year we all just want to give back and forget about. But look, I think in terms of bushfire communities, particularly, the cleanups by Lane O'Rourke has gone full steam ahead. People feel a bit forgotten. I think that's a fair assessment, particularly some of our volunteers who deserve better support. And I think the big thing that everyone's fearful of is, well, what's the future hold? We've got to look for new tourism opportunities, new tourism products. It's got to be done safely, because we're trying to minimise the risk of a second wave of the pandemic. I think the second wave of COVID during this pandemic, I just think at the moment people are still very much coming to terms with it. They're traumatised. And any support that people can give, it's fantastic. And our industries now particularly just need, some well-crafted stimulus support to get back on their feet. You're right about people, they're not going to travel overseas obviously anytime soon. So getting out of Sydney is going to be something that a lot of people will really enjoy doing. Yeah, there's nothing better than sort of looking at some of these areas and the wonderful environment that we've got, at home, and people can get out, walk, get some fresh air, get away from the hustle and bustle of COVID.
So from your point of view, though, because this is a question, now that on the 1st of June, the government here in New South Wales has said, go forth, everybody, get out there and go visit friends and relatives, have a bit of a break. So communities down on the South Coast, because I'm sure that's going to be an incredibly popular destination, that's a place everybody will want to go. You think the people are up for a big load of tourists heading their way?
People are nervous. You only need to go on Facebook and look at the responses to ABC Southeast and places. I mean, realistically, people are nervous. So we need, certainly, I think industry, the hospitality, the tourism sector is going to have to work very hard to ensure that we've got really safe physical distancing. Our supermarkets are going to have to manage that. And, when you've got a lot of seniors who live in your community, that's the sort of apprehension level that sits there. So, it's vitally important that with, this wonderful outcome in terms of people being able to travel, everyone avoid complacency. I've been saying it all week around the transport plan, we just got to make sure that people keep apart. And when they do come, just be realistic and look out for locals. I mean, if you're feeling unwell, don't come to the regions. Our hospitals are not built for pandemics, and we have limited ICU capacity. So we really don't need a potential risk there. So whatever we do in this space has got to be done with really good industry planning. And support. I mean, I know it's hard for pubs and clubs particularly because, those places exist because of, people wanting to socialise. And what we know with the virus is that the best way to spread it is through socialisation. So, it's a really hard virus to overcome, and we've got to be managing that well.
So let's have a little bit of a think about the next stage of the recovery phase, which is, and it's really important that we understand what's going to happen in a new workspace. We spent some time talking to Professor Ray Cooper quite recently from Sydney University about what is the world going to look like, what's the workplace going to look like, and therefore what's commuting going to look like. So for you, what do you think the big challenges are going to be over the next 6 months in terms of this redesign of the workplace and the staggering of commuter times and the fact that everybody's diving back into a car?
Yeah. Well, you know, innovation's playing a big role. So I think that, you know, I mean, here we are, you know, we're using innovation to have this discussion. I think there's going to be a lot of innovation that takes place over the next 6 months, which will guide us to minimise our social contact and as best as possible live with this bloody thing. And you know, I think in many ways at the moment, like, you've got to be cautious. Like, I would hate, given we're seeing the numbers even today out of the high number of deaths from this virus in the Northern Hemisphere, I do think that, you know, yes, we've been a smart country in terms of managing this. You know, you hear people say, oh yeah, the economic consequences of this are far worse than the virus itself. And we could see a lot of mental health and suicides and everything else from it. So I do think people need to think and strategically. I think our political leadership has done incredibly well till now, and we'll need to continue that. I heard you the other night saying on Credlin that, you know, COAG should be ditched for the National Cabinet process. That needs to be maintained, that discipline, through the stimulus approach and industry support that's going to be required to get this mess fixed. And, you know, we're in for some scary numbers. I mean, the unemployment numbers are masked by JobKeeper at the moment. Every day that we go longer with, you know, shutdowns, the less chance a business will reopen. So, you know, look, I think it's going to require some cool heads, strategic minds, no expended energies on political arguments, and make sure we do it well.
Mm. You know, it's an interesting exercise too in terms of this confidence factor amongst the public, because I think, you know, we all make policy and assume things will happen, but in the end run, we have a changed mindset out there in commuter land. And interestingly, off the back of a bit of survey work we've just done nationally, people are more inclined to get on an aeroplane. They think an aeroplane is safer than a bus, but they think a train is much safer than both of those.
Yeah, I mean, we're nudging commuters. Like, I'm doing the biggest nudge in the history of transport at the moment. You know, we're trying to guide commuters. We're trying to limit the numbers on buses because, you know, we're starting to see some loads which I didn't like seeing on a number of services. We're using data every 5 minutes to guide the network and guide commuters. All the trip planning apps have been updated with relevant information, so people can even go back from the day before and have a look at how their service performed. You know, we've got to very much ensure, with the high intense cleaning that we're undertaking, the direct instruction from the Premier to not travel during peak hour, smarter thinkings around active transport, walking and cycling, and we're putting 10 kilometres of additional bike lanes in and around the city CBD. Overflow car parks, the use of commercial car parks. You know, it's still 16% under the, you know, normal road usage that we see across metropolitan Sydney at the moment. So, you know, we've got this challenge. Kids are going back to school full on Monday, so that in itself is going to present another challenge. But, you know, I think ultimately, if people are sensible, I mean, it's like, I got asked a question by a journo the other day. It's like, well, like, if I saw a crowded bus, I wouldn't get on it. You know, if I saw a crowded train carriage, I wouldn't get on it. You know, common sense. Aeroplanes, I think Alan Joyce was making the point last night, everyone's facing the same way, and there's a screen, and it's called the seat. And the air conditioning pushes down. Well, you know, surely some public health expert out there can double check that and say, yeah, that's right, let's get on with it. You know, it's even like other, you know, private sectors within the transport field. I mean, the charter buses, I mean, and those private operations there. I mean, again, I'd recommend they just follow the lead that we're doing with CountryLink. And, you know, yes, for a step change approach, limit the bookings for a little while. Let's see how we go. And if we don't see a massive upsurge in the infection rate, well, then you know, you can look at how you can guide commuters even more so around the network and do it safely and run more services intra-peak. Look at our structures in terms of our fares. Look at how we're using innovation. Reset our work days, retime business. The nighttime economy, there's an enormous opportunity there. Our retailers, I mean, they don't have to just work from their usual business hours. I mean, we've got online deliveries happening in a different way now. So everything's changing. And at its heart is, well, transport and mobility has got to be agile, and we've got to be sensible. So, I think, we've got probably the cautious approach, the right approach at the moment, and a bit of common sense doesn't go astray either.
Absolutely. I agree with that completely. I think common sense is the key. And the other issue is people understanding that industry has some role to play too in terms of putting together their own COVID business plans. It's not all going to be an issue.
Yeah, I mean, it's like country pubs. I mean, if they want to look at ways to be able to manage that, I mean, the argument they're making is, if we've got no COVID in our local area, well then, we should be having less restrictions in the city areas. I mean, industry plans are a good thing because we can allow the public health officials to look at it, and most industry plans are devised in a way to try and get business going again and balance it out with a degree of distancing in terms of mankind. So look, I think there's enormous scope for industry leaders to really push hard, and we saw it with some of our professional sports, and I think with the tourism and hospitality sector in particular, as long as those small boutique tourist operators in the bush are getting assistance in terms of how to manage their front counters and their cleaning and all of those types of things, there's no reason why we can safely let the community get on with it and hopefully start to save some livelihoods.
So I'm starting to get some questions through from our attendees, and I might just pop some of these into the mix. We have a question here from Bruce Baird. Thank you for joining us, Bruce. He's just wondering that there is a particular service being used on the MTA in New York, which is they're trialling an ultraviolet light that zaps the virus and it leaves their facilities disinfected. Is that viable? Is that an option here? Is that something you're looking at?
We haven't, necessarily looked at the ultraviolet light technology, and what Bruce is alluding to is smart. I mean, it's taking what has been trialled in a controlled environment, obviously in the States, and looking at how it could be potentially applied across the board. I mean, I think public health officials are just jumping at everything to try and see what's feasible to manage this. I mean, I think the hard cold reality around this virus, like most coronaviruses, is they never find a vaccine. They find treatments, and we're going to have to live with it. So, I hope that technology to which Bruce is alluding works, but, we at the moment, we're spending $250 million extra on cleaning of our transport network and other government facilities, but we have gone, hell for leather with transport. The network's never been so clean. So we're going to keep that discipline going, and hopefully something like what Bruce has alluded to will come along.
So just on the subject of cleaning and other procedures in this space, and obviously each state will do things slightly differently. How much conversation is happening between you and your peers in other states, and potentially in some places overseas? Because, at times like this, sharing ideas is always a great thing.
Oh, look, I mean, our people are in contact with other jurisdictions around the world. We have a Transport and Infrastructure Council hook up pretty much, it seems, every week, but at least every 2 weeks. We've been talking the whole way through the pandemic, and it's not, and this is what I'm saying, COAG should be killed off by COVID. We need to, that structure doesn't work.
No.
So, we've discussed items which has been really fruitful and very good in terms of the state ministers with Michael McCormack, and long may it continue. So, we were the first state to go out with the plan that we have. We're one of the first jurisdictions in the world to mix it up with good trip planning application information coupled with the dots and the nudging and the whole kit and caboodle. And the other states have been looking at us this week and been in contact and have sort of taken note. So I know you're always going to get a television camera, go down to Wynyard and find a bus with more than 12 people on it, but generally across the network it's been superb. People are using the services, but they're doing it sensibly, and that's all we can ask of people at the moment. So yeah, look, I think the talk's good, the leadership's good, and long may it continue.
So you mentioned sort of technology and how important that is to managing this process. So are you using real-time data at the moment to sort of manage numbers and keeping an eye on the mechanism? What are the sort of technological advances that have come out of this process?
There it is.
That wasn't a Dorothy Dixer.
No. No. We know which bus services are at capacity. We've got marshals now working, police now working. I mean, it's a bit of people got to get used to it. I mean, I don't announce it on Monday. I've laughed my head off at some of these people in the media saying, "Oh, it's already failed." Yeah, whatever. Like as we all know in this space, in this industry, there's a pattern of behaviour that people need to get used to when it comes to transport, and that'll happen. The thing about it is that, I know, for instance, every morning, like I check the road stats, we're still 16% under the pre-COVID levels in terms of our road usage. We have set limitations in terms of safe capacity for our buses, trains and ferries. So it's 24% pre-COVID levels in terms of trains, 12% with buses, 22% with ferries, and we're able to, if need be, if things get out of hand, or we can close the station for 15 minutes. We can. Bus drivers don't have to pick people up if the bus is at that level. I mean, I'd be the first person criticised if we just let the network go back to what it was going to potentially do and have outbreaks. Like they'd be, singing from my head. So, this is a good mechanism to keep people safe first and foremost. They're not hard, fast public health orders. They're common sense guidelines. And 400,000 decals or green stickers later, it's important for people to know how to use the network in these really trying days.
Excellent. So maybe we might move on to the larger infrastructure issues here too, because I think one of the things that was most important early on in this COVID exercise was that the New South Wales government sort of led the charge, coming out to say that they would continue to support and fund a whole range of major infrastructure projects as a stimulus to the economy. Now, most of those sit within your portfolio. So talk us through some of your favourites.
Not that I get credit for this, but I made a deliberate decision with Rod that we would keep all services going, keep all transport workers employed, and we would keep our work sites going. And that's exactly what we've done. And thank God we did. And we're now at a point where I've made it clear that we've got some very big projects in the wings. We've got to get on and deliver those more quickly. Some of our infrastructure projects sped up during the last 2 months because there's less cars on the road, so our truck movements were better. That's been very important. We've been able to keep people safe. I think there's been a small number of people who got infected with the virus from subcontractor land, but generally, we've been able to keep things going. So, we're out to market on a number of big projects. Around the corners, West Harbour Tunnel, Gateway, which is the connection between WestConnex and the airport. These are motorway projects, the M6, even today I'm about to make another big announcement in terms of trains. They're awarding contracts there. So, look, we're just going to keep putting our head down and keep delivering results. And, as long as you've got cool, experienced heads within ministers and governments doing this stuff, there's no reason why, we can't keep building day by day to reboot the joint and, you know, go back to as quickly as possible a normality which doesn't see hundreds of thousands of Australians, you know, potentially heading towards poverty courtesy of the economic consequences of this.
Mm. So just keen for you to talk me through Metro at this point in time, because I mean, essentially, you know, one of the really exciting things about this project is it means that it you know, essentially gives Sydney the largest metro system anywhere in the world. Extraordinary. So how's that project progressing? Where is that one sitting at the moment?
If, you know, look, I've seen where the Metro City Southwest project's at. People will be blown away when I can get back down in the tunnels and show everyone how far it's progressed. So it's humming along. For 2023-24, we're going to have a driverless train under our city and out to the southwest. I'm glad Bruce is on the call because, you know, Mike and I did a lot of big work on that project in terms of the leasing of the poles and wires to put $7 billion directly into the project. And this is what you get when you recycle capital, a massive, massive uplift in our productivity. And it's very pleasing to be guiding that project. And, you know, the team that is working on it from John Holland is superb. Terry Sleeman and those guys are just amazing guys. And they've really just cracked on. The central walk and the central precinct, people will be shocked at the advancement in terms of that project and how it's shaping up. So, look, this is just all systems go. And, of course, also around the corner, we're now obviously getting into the very serious planning work with Metro Greater West and Metro West. The Greater West being the airport and Western Sydney Airport line, and of course also Greater West between the city and Parramatta.
So just, you know, from a skills perspective too, and, you know, this one probably qualifies as a question without notice, you know, it is a stretch here in Australia to find the right skill base to produce some of these amazing projects. And the issue around visitor visas and being able to bring in people from overseas was a big issue before COVID. But now in this set of circumstances, it will be more complex, but it will still be necessary because we just don't have people trained at the maturity level that some of these projects are going to need. Do you see any change there? Is that something you think the National Cabinet could be paying some attention to?
Look, it's particularly pertinent in the high-end skilled project management level. So, I mean, there are, I think, going to have to be some discussions at some point, particularly if there's capacity constraints. I mean, you know, at the moment we've got agents overseas who are doing the inspections in terms of the ongoing manufacturing work that we need done with some of our vehicles and train fleets that we've got procured. From a project manager perspective, looking backwards from overseas coming into Australia, yeah, obviously we're trying to ensure that capability is maintained. You know, more broadly, I think we're going to have to look at how we use those opportunities to reskill and rebase an unemployed workforce from the impact of COVID. So the retail sector in particular, possibly the hospitality sector, we're going to see a lot of people who might have to be transitioned across to work on big infrastructure projects, be trained up on the job, be part of the vocational education sector as part of a infrastructure partnership skills hub approach and have the skills and the training happening on site. With skills centres, I mean, you only need half a dozen demountables and you can set up an infrastructure training centre. And that's what we're doing with some of our projects now. So, yeah, we'll see more of that. So,
you know, New South Wales has always been streets ahead of every other state. And I just want to come back to some of the innovation pieces, because I think we can spend a lot of time thinking about the now and the problems in the now, and they're important, but it's also about what the future is going to look like and continuing to be connected to that. Now, New South Wales, on the basis of research work we've done, is the best state in the country for that innovation, and in fact is better than places like Singapore, which are the world benchmark for it. So where do you think this situation, the change in the workplace, the change in commuter patterns, etc., what impact is that going to have on transport mobility and transport on demand, all of these kinds of innovations that you guys have really led the pack on. How will that change?
Oh, I think it'll speed up mobility as a service. I mean, the outcome of this is people are going to travel less around town. So the 5-day work week between 9 and 5, that's gone. We want to try and get rid of peak hours as best we can at the moment because of the risk. But if you actually think about it becoming a permanent feature of our landscape where people, for argument's sake, might start their day at midday and work through till 8 or 9 o'clock versus someone who might be able to start their day at 6 and finish at 2. I mean, we will start to see, I think, a very much a change in our daily routines. So, as I said at the start, I mean, at the core of that will be innovation and how that functions and works. And I think increasingly our people will, they'll want to avoid crowds, so they probably will become more personalised in their transport services and how they purchase and potentially subscribe to those services.
Okay. So look, on a more traditional type of service, this week, and I've got a question here from Will O'Neill, who's on the line. There's been quite a bit of talk about bus privatisation, and Will's asking, there's a pending release of tenders for bus service contracts for Region 8. What are the benefits that you actually see from, arising from awarding these contracts to the private sector? And I mean, look, TTF has been a huge advocate of that privatisation process and continues to be, but what's your, specifics in terms of what you feel the benefits are?
Well, I mean, with the contract Region 6, it's a $140 million saving, which is now invested back into delivering more services for the bus network, which has grown by 50% in the last 5 years. I mean, the growth in patronage in the last 5 years since I've been minister has been unbelievable. It's been extraordinary. So, we don't have the ability to waste money through mismanagement of resource. So we need to bring the experts in who have the, lifelong expertise in terms of managing bus fleets and getting the best out of the fleets to deliver more kilometres. I mean, we still own the buses, government, we still own it, or from the Crown and the people, we still own the buses, we still regulate the time for tables, the fares through Opal, and continue to own the depots. So, it's sensible. The drivers get job guarantees, and, in the case of the STA currently, it'll be, 3 years of certainty in terms of their jobs. In every case, when you do this, you see the workforce grow. So no one's going to lose a job. If anything, there's going to be more union members, the TW and RTBU, and everyone's a winner. The customers get better services. And the other big thing, which I'm really passionate about, is it's time to electrify the diesel bus fleet. We need a pathway to, stop the diesel particulates poisoning us all, which is the case particularly in Europe, where they're monitoring the nitrous oxide gases that are produced from diesel, and they've got a direct correlation with the community's health. So we need to do this. And then, of course, you've got the environmental benefits in terms of emissions, and you've got the amenity benefits in terms of the noise. That's where I want to put the savings from these three contract regions back into changing the very nature of the fleet.
So tell me this too, because towards the end of last year, I think you were actually overseas looking at some of these innovations and trying to get a handle on what could be transplanted and would be good for New South Wales. What was the most exciting thing you saw while you're away that if you had the open check that you'd put in place here in Australia instantly?
Oh, the immediate electrification of the fleet, and throw in some hydrogen as well, hydrogen buses. The infrastructure is a bit larger to manage hydrogen, but just electrify the fleet. You'd do it in a heartbeat if you could. But we've got work to do in terms of the manufacturers. They've got to rescope their plants and convert from diesel to the production of electrical buses. We're seeing a very healthy competition around the world in terms of battery capacity. So, the notion and concept of recharging, the length of time that the buses can be on the network, all these improvements and innovations we'll see. But it'd be irresponsible of me to just keep saying, oh, let's just keep having diesel buses. I don't think that's smart. So, you know, that would be probably the first thing I'd do.
And so just out of curiosity too, you mentioned hydrogen, mentioned electric, biofuels, does that sort of figure in the exercise or not quite as viable an option?
Why would you go half the way? Why would you only go half the way? Go all the way. There's no point in having an aspiration and not trying to achieve it. And so, I think that's probably the most important thing we can do. Just have a glide path, know when we're going to purchase our last diesel bus, pick a date, and then tick a target date to convert 7,000 buses in the city to electric. So I've now got the operators proactively coming to me saying, oh, we want to bring forward our procurement of the X buses and we want them to be electric and all of those types of things. So, the industry's showing good leadership. That's what matters.
Just staying on the bus for a moment, we're getting a few inquiries from participants about coach operators in a whole range of different environments. But just talk me through how it works in terms of charter buses and so forth that are servicing schools. What kind of guidelines are going to need to apply to that, or is that something you're seeking industry input on in terms of how they might manage that situation on those coaches?
We have our dedicated school services. We're keeping a bit of distance between the drivers and the passengers and the school kids. But for school kids in those dedicated services, they're like being treated like the school classrooms. There's no 1.5 metre distancing rules applying in terms of the school buses. But we're telling parents to drive their kids to school. That would make sense. That would be the best thing that could happen. We saw an instance yesterday with one of the private schools having a COVID-related issue. That kid wasn't on school services. But there's no point in pretending this. We are going to see risk, and we are going to see the potential for people to be hurt by a second wave of infection. So we've got to be very careful. In terms of adult services, the social distancing is going to apply if kids are getting on the general network. They need to find a green dot. They will be prioritised. I'm not prepared to see kids left on the side of the road by bus drivers if because of the physical distancing guidelines. We need to make sure that quite frankly, if a couple of adults are late to work because a kid's been picked up first, no one's going to begrudge that. So look, I think there's that degree of practicality, bit of common sense and protection for the drivers. Again, we're just guided by public health officials. Okay,
super, thank you. We've got another question here to do with mobilities from David Bolt. What's your view in terms of the possibility for public and private sector mobility providers working together to try and reduce the peaks and to manage that sort of peak activity on the network? Is there an appetite to be doing more in that sharing between the private and the Transport for New South Wales?
Yeah, we need all ideas. We need all leadership. Wouldn't matter if it's micro mobility or mass transit. We need it. So we need to hear the ideas. The e-scooter lobby have been at me a bit, but the thing is that whatever we do has got to be safe. Basically the message I'm sending to people is don't do one-stop trips, walk. One of our most patronised lines at the moment from point A to point B on the network is bloody Town Hall to Wynyard, because people are, for whatever reason, they've just decided, I couldn't be bothered walking down the road. Why would you do that in the middle of a pandemic? Get out and walk. That's the hard line approach, which unfortunately we've got to use to try and nudge people. And so, I am trying to promote kindness and, very much respect. We're going to see a lot of cycling. That does mean drivers are going to need to be more patient. We do need to get people away from peak hour at all costs, because we're butting up against safe capacity now. And just have everybody just retime and plan their days properly. And if the private sector have great initiatives and ideas, people will flock to them and use them because they want to be safe. Everyone's scared about getting sick. So, that's the thing that we need to do.
Can I just take you back to bikes for a minute? Because I know you're a mountain bike rider yourself. Yeah. But what are the sort of, this is a pretty dramatic change in the sort of uptake of bikes. It's one of the, this social experiment of all of us working from home is probably going to generate a whole lot of other outcomes, for the health portfolios and others if we're all going to be walking and riding bikes more. What do you see as the big education issues on the road to get people to understand more about that increase in bike riders? Because it is going to make a big difference to the way, drivers operate on the road.
Yeah, as I said, I've seen a 50% upsurge in bike usage in the city in the last 5 years. I know during the pandemic, a lot of people gone and bought bikes, e-bikes, which are great because hills are not a problem if you've got an electric bike, a pedal assist style bike. So, you can quite literally get on a bike and not arrive at work, sweaty and needing a shower if you ride an e-bike. So look, I think there's some practicalities around that. I think people knowing the rules, the general road rules, that's again part of the problem. A lot of cyclists ride around the city here thinking it's fun to, ride down pedestrian zones when they shouldn't and ride through red lights when they shouldn't. And then on top of it, you got drivers who don't respect the metre distancing below 60 k's per hour. So, we've got an education piece which needs to sit alongside this. Same time, we're going to try and separate cars and bikes out a little bit more, which is why there's 10.3 kilometres of additional pop-up bike paths going in places like Moore Park Road and Sydney Park Road, in places like Alexandria and Erskineville and Pyrmont. We just need to try and, where we can, separate it out and encourage this. So it's good, it's healthy, it's safe. You can't get COVID on a bike. So, that's the type of thing we need people to do. I mean, it's just crazy. We're trying to encourage, the ability to have capacity for those suburban, outer suburban areas where people have to commute long distances. The last thing we can afford is for those trains and what have you getting to inner city stops and everyone piling in on top of each other. So that's why if you live in a place like King's Cross, or Pyrmont or Redfern, take the 15 minutes, 20 minutes and walk to work if you have to go to your office. Otherwise, just continue to work from home. That's the strongest advice we can give.
So let's just quickly, in the time we've got left, perhaps go to another part of your very extensive portfolio, which is, of course, country rail services, and maybe...
Minister Toole, but I'll try and help you out.
Well, thank you. Yes, I know. But I mean, it's essentially part of the overall transport network. And I know you'll be across whatever's, happening in that space. But what sort of changes do you see on those country rail systems coming forward? Because, they're going to be a very important part of the tourism, reinvention in that part of the world, as, for example, coaches and others are going to be as well.
They're a bit easier to manage in terms of social and physical distancing because we've got ticket control. So, there's been limitations put on the availability of tickets just to maintain the physical distancing. But, I mean, it's such an uneconomic network at the moment because, everybody who travels is typically a concession card holder, and so therefore we've got a lot of taxpayer subsidy going into maintaining these services. So, it's not a bad thing. It's important for country areas. But, if people want to use the train to Dubbo to go to the zoo and, the train down to Kiama and all these types of things, I mean, the services are still running. We just want people to stay that 1.5 metre apart. And once the world comes up with a treatment to this hideous virus, well, then all systems go. We're very nervous for our over 70s and those with comorbidity issues. They shouldn't be travelling and they shouldn't be anywhere near a transport network. I mean, if you think about all the areas across the community which could pose the risk of community transmission, transport is it. We saw saw that with the London subway, the New York subway and the tube in London. So we've got to be smart about this. So yeah, country's the same rules apply there as they do, metropolitan Sydney.
I'm conscious of time, but before you leave us, I have to ask you, post the 1st of June, everybody will be looking for somewhere to go and either relax or do whatever. So do you want to tell us your favourite place on the South Coast, or you just don't want to share? But I mean, where would you say to people, go there for a break?
Well, they're not going to Queensland.
No, very true.
How dumb is that, by the way? Anyway, I mean, everyone's squabbling. Look, I think, there's so many hidden gems. Look, the places that I love at home, I mean, I love my own beach, so I'm not going to tell you where that is. I love my own mountain bike track, I'm not going to tell you where that is. But one of the most incredible experiences that you can honestly ever have, and, this is at a global level now, would be to go down to Narooma Charters on a winter's day with a calm sea and go out to Montague Island. And, during the whale season, which obviously is July through to September, you will see pods of humpbacks in the dozens. In the summer months, you can go down there and you can actually swim with seals at the northern end of the island. The seabirds are amazing. The view is just spectacular. And then underlying all of that is just this incredible Aboriginal history and connection. So that the cultural sensitivities around Montague through to Gulliga and what have you, it is spectacular. So I think that's definitely probably a recommendation. And then of course you've got Tilba there. So you've got the cheese factory at Tilba, and Nick and Erica Dibden. They've got their own boutique cheese factory. The seafood's incredible. So yeah, I mean, that's one of the hidden gems. I mean, we don't have 5-star golf resorts and high-rise and casinos and all these things. So the other big thing, which touch on mountain bikes, we're working on a number of strategies at Mogo and at Eden. And I ride at Mogo every week, half a dozen times if I could, but I usually go twice a week, 3 times a week. Because of the fires, the tracks are amazing. And we've had an organisation called Trailworks come through, and they've looked at what could be mapped out. And, for a $4 million investment, we think we can get about $10 to $12 million conservative uplift with 6 new operators coming in who can transfer these lunatics from the bottom of the hill up to the top of the hill in the ranges and let them rip. So, we want to become the destination where you can ride your mountain bike in the winter months, because Threadbow, it's a bit icy and you have to compete with skiers on mountain bikes if you go up there. So it's a lot better. So that's what we're doing, and that then fills some cafes. It gives some dollars to the local bike shops. And yeah, it amazes me. Like the other day, like the kids during the COVID crisis have gone and come up with something that resembles the Whistler bike park with jumps that, like these kids are flying meters and meters in the air and meters high. They've got no fear. And this is the good thing about it. It's a good activity. And the other thing that I'm seeing is a lot of people over the age of 60 getting electric mountain bikes, which means that there is absolutely no dramas in getting up big hills and going out and riding for an hour or two and not being exhausted. You just quite literally can sit there and have the bike do the work for you if so look, it's a good time for us to come up with innovations and good products which will encourage more people.
Well, and thank you for that. You clearly fall into the category of being a bike maniac, one of those people who'll be right at the top of the hill. Thank you very much, Minister, for sharing both your passion for the portfolio and your electorate in the tourism industry, as well as, of course, the wider transport industry.
Yeah, well, can I just thank everyone on the call? I mean, there's great leadership being shown by business. And, you know, I mean, I think it's fair to say after this year, I've been pretty unfiltered with my view on political leadership, but I do think that, you know, being kind to everybody and working together is really important and, you know, very important, and particularly now. So kindness is key, and making sure that we, you know, get through this together and try and help as many people on the way through. And we're all blessed given the positions we all have, particularly on this call and people like myself, but there's incredible damage that's been done out there. And we've got to work to lift every single Australian up and do it well. So, you know, I'm really sad about what's happening to the tourism industry. You know, we started to see some incredible improvements after the fires in January, in the months of February and early March. We will see the re-establishment of the cruise industry. You know, I better than anyone, given the regional cruise in Eden, you know, I will work my tail off to get the industry back safe and well. And, you know, it's really important. So we've got a lot of work to do, and it'll be good to do it with you and your members.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much, Minister, and take care and stay safe.
Good on you. Thanks, mate.
Thank you.